Hey, again, this is the weekly chart on silver. Now, I know people are bored with charts, but I just want to point out, damn, I should have stuck with my convictions, but I thought the bottom for silver was going to be here sometime in April, and it looks like it's playing out like I thought it would. I was going to say 24, 25. Now, it's already been touching down in the 26 range. Now, I want to talk about some other things to get rid of some myths out there, and also talk about some of the real odd curveballs that come up. Because, if you look at history, you learn from history, right? But, a lot of times history is, it's a bunch of events that happen, and basically it's stuff that people didn't expect at all. That's why it became an historical event. Big change. Now, I know there's a lot of stuff about hyperinflation and stuff like that. I don't think that's going to happen in the United States under quote-unquote normal circumstances where everything's going along, where the United States is the big superpower in the world because you got the clout to basically get any kind of resources you need. Now, I want to talk a little bit about Iran, and I know this gets really controversial to talk about Iran, but first, let's just look at the Kitco chart. Today it did hit a low of 26.68. Now it's at 27.71. As for the silver, looks like gold. It's approaching that 1,500 mark. Platinum's approaching that 1,400 mark. Palladium is holding up pretty well. Oil is down. It's down to I think 92.73. Now everything's down. It's not just like a big silver conspiracy. Silver gets hit harder, but when it goes up harder. You can't really call this, I might call it a little bit of a conspiracy because I'm a little like that. I think that way too, somewhat. I think the markets are somewhat rigged where they could be, there's a lot of leverage built into the markets. They can go up harder and they can come down harder now with all these new financial instruments anybody can click a button on and buy. They're in everything. You don't need to even know how to use options. You can just buy these different financial instruments, and that puts a lot more volatility into the market. But I'm holding. The only thing I got long on is oil, and I'm double leveraged, and I'm getting killed on it. Right now, this was something I kind of was suspecting, but sometimes I get. I figured maybe they would be attacking Iran by mid-spring. But usually there's a pullback. I noticed this. This is where I think the game sometimes could be played around with a little bit. Because I noticed, like, before oil stayed up high due to tensions in the Middle East. And actually the tensions are much higher than they've ever been. So I'm a little suspicious about that market. But I know I'm going to work out. That's going to work out because they are going to attack Iran. Now, this is what I want to talk about. Basically, unintended consequences. And, I always stated that there's always things that come out of left field. The unexpected happens. The best minds have plans, and the plans just don't go as they expect. This happens in war all the time. I don't give a damn how many military experts you look at or even economic experts you look at. There's a lot of factors going on. And, sometimes that's why I want to look back at this chart again. That's sometimes why I like the Fibonacci. Because sometimes nature is playing out a role. This Fibonacci is working out beautifully. Beautifully. Now, I know you're thinking it's going down. Now, I wish I had the, I am so much of the camp that everything's going to crash. You got to hold physical metals. I went long too early on stuff. I didn't go long up here, but I went long around here. And everything, platinum, palladium, and silver. But I do want to point out that fundamentally that's the right place to be. And it's just playing out a cycle. That's all it is. It's playing out a cycle. It's not really the banksters doing anything or anything like that. But I want to point out some of the oddball things that can come back. And I'm going to come back to this chart here about hyperinflation. Now, you notice a lot of times in various events. Now, basically, this is from Wikipedia. It's information that's gleaned from Wikipedia. Socialist regime comes up a lot in the event of hyperinflation. Argentina, Bolivia, Chile, Israel, I guess, Madagascar, Nicaragua, Peru, and Turkey. Now, also here, war comes up. Angola, Austria, Bosnia, China, Germany, Hungary, Israel, Japan, and Mozambique, Philippines, Taiwan, and Zaire, and also, Zimbabwe. Now, you notice all these countries that I show, well, most of these countries are small countries. That's one thing. And you notice there's really not, you're not seeing any of the Western nations in this at all. But I think there might be an exception to the rule this time. And what I'm really also beginning to wonder about is how is this going to play out with Iran? This war, if it damages the prestige of the United States, I think the United States is definitely going to win in Iran. I mean, it all depends on if it's going to win quickly, or is it going to be drawn out? Is it going to have blunders in it? Is it going to damage the prestige for the United States? Is it going to be something that the whole world turns against the United States on? I don't know. Now I want to point out something about Iran itself too, because this was basically a statement from the Iranian hardliners. God, there are so many questions about, do they have nuclear weapons or do they not have nuclear weapons? And to me, hands down, they're trying to get nuclear weapons because they got like 100 years supply of natural gas and crude oil, and for the little bit of amount of electricity this nuclear material would produce, which is going to run out in a couple decades. Uranium's running out, and they got to harden the silos and everything where they keep everything, and they have to basically put up lots of economic sanctions. They're doing it for nuclear weapons. Well, this is a statement basically right from the hardliners from Iran. Basically, they're saying they need nuclear weapons. That's the first line out of it. The hardliners in Iran said Iran needs nuclear weapons to defend itself. It is beset by enemies. The Sunni states would love to overthrow our government. Just recall that Iraq, when it was Sunni-run state, it attacked us, starting a war that killed hundreds of thousands of Iranians. And note that Sunni states are currently trying to overthrow our ally in Syria, just one domino away from the fall of our own government. And don't forget about it, the American Zionist Axis, prominent Americans and Israelis openly call for regime change in Tehran, and we suspect that this is a secret goal of the Obama administration. Now, I can also interject that despite, how you translate things exactly, Iran would definitely want to see Israel disappear, and they do a lot of different things against Israel too. There's like a whole big covert war going on here, despite any kind of talk that comes out of politicians' mouths that might seem a little bit benign. It's not benign. It's not benign. There's a lot of garbage going on, and I would actually state the average American, and I'm talking probably well over 90-something%, would get totally sick of the religious fundamentalist regime in Iran in 2 seconds flat, and I think most of the Iranians over there do not like that regime. It's a dictatorship. So, I mean, I just want to put things in perspective, because I know there's a lot of propaganda out there by the state-run Russia Today news network, and there's a lot of Americans going, yeah, the evil capitalistic West, but it's not exactly like that. Actually, the leaders in Russia are probably 100 times worse, and the leaders in Iran are, they're basically dictators. They're dictators, and, from what I always see about a lot of dictatorships in that area of the world, they apply strict religious laws to the common people, but they seem to not go by them too much themselves. But, that's all hidden from public view. Now, what's going on in this area is that they have, I'm not going to say this word, Mujahideen, or MEK. That's an organization that we considered in the United States to be a terrorist organization. It's still listed as a terrorist organization. Right now, there's a move to try to delist them and use them against the Iranian regime. But the problem with that, in other words, what they're doing is they're paying high-dollar prominent speakers to go around and talk about why the MEK should be delisted as a terrorist regime, because they want to be using them against the Iranian regime. And actually, supposedly, they were behind some of the bombings and killings of, the Iranian nuclear scientists, along with, help from the Mossad. Now, the only problem is with that, it kind of gives some strength to the Iranian hardliner argument. So, now, this situation, why I'm bringing this up, is because it actually has a lot of bearing on investments. Because if this whole situation with Iran is not resolved in a way that's prestigious to the United States, it will have a major impact on a lot of different things, that the way America's strength is and actually its economy. Because this could be a game changer for the United States. This could be a mistake. It may be a mistake. I'm not sure. But, I personally think that if they got the right military people in there, that this war would be over very quickly. And you could remove the bad guys in Iran without taking out population. Because the regime in Iran is a dictatorial type of regime. And, I know they got elections and stuff, but I mean, it's like there's plenty of human rights abuses going on in Iran. It's a little ridiculous. And, I did point out about the Baha'i sect, religious sect. They accept Muhammad as a prophet, but the fundamentalists basically got a lot of their people in jail over there because they don't go along with their religion. This is a radical religious regime. So, it's like, I don't know why people in the West bitch about, well, I could see why they bitch about the Western League, but a lot of these places in other parts of the world, they're like 100 times worse. But, sometimes what I wonder about is in our military. We got all the high-tech weapons. One thing I always pointed out was, this is a picture of some bullets, right? This is a .308 Winchester 7.62 millimeter NATO, and this is a 6.5 Grendel, and this is a 5.56 NATO with the M16 cartridge. What is interesting, and this has been out for more than 10 years, and a lot of times it's minor details like this that make a big difference. They should have adapted this cartridge a long time ago. It's actually minimal cost. It's just a matter of barrel changes on existing weaponry, not changing the entire weapon, and magazine changes, which actually could be, the original magazines could be remanufactured into magazines that fit this round. The difference is that this little round is about almost the same size as this, except the projectile is about twice as large. But it actually has more reaching power than this large one. That makes a major difference in a war-type situation. And, a lot of times it's all the little things that add up. It's amazing they didn't adopt this because they think they're worried about NATO and all this kind of garbage. But, I always wish the Marine Corps would have just adopted it, said screw all the rest of it. But I guess you can't do that because your hands are tied by the Department of Defense. And they're probably tied by other politics and other bullshit that goes on. But this is actually a minimal cost conversion that would make a major difference in, fighting an enemy. And actually it is details that make a difference. Now, why I'm bringing this all up in silver is that if this war becomes more widespread and it becomes where the United States is has to stay in the region to protect its oil interest, and there's a lot of other problems going on, and there's like a draft is instituted or something like that, and it turns into a big mess, you might see some serious government spending out like crazy. It's an unknown. It's an unknown. It's always been this way. All the best minds have made mistakes and have made miscalculations. I almost think this might be a screw-up, although it shouldn't be. It might be a screw-up. We do have some... I don't particularly have too much faith in our current politicians or Secretary of State or the Chairman of the Federal Reserve, to tell you the truth. And we could, basically we got kind of a socialist regime in here. That's really what it is. And we don't really have very strong leadership. And, I don't consider Mitt Romney strong leadership. Now, I know this is talking a little bit about politics, but I think I'm really kind of pushing this more from the angle of where things can play out for the metals. We could actually go into hyperinflation. Under normal times, we're not going to have hyperinflation as long as the United States stays number one militarily and exercises its foreign policy. And if this situation with Iran comes out very smoothly and it's executed in a very fast fashion, and the regime has changed, and everything's back to normal again, and there's a minimal disruption of oil supplies, then there's not going to be a problem. But if there's a major disruption of oil supplies, there's going to be major price increases on gasoline. There's going to be major prices of gold because of uncertainty. And then silver's going to skyrocket. Then there's going to be all kinds of emergency maneuvers by the government, and they're going to print money like crazy. That's where war socialist regime could possibly come into play. Now, my contention always is, look at the little stuff. This is like this is what this one on the left is what the Marines and soldiers should be using today, versus this one on the right. This was a short-range jungle warfare type cartridge designed for Vietnam back in the 60s. Wasn't bad. They redesigned it again. This is vastly superior. They probably could very much use the distance in areas that are more open, like in a desert. Yet you could still carry about 28 rounds for the same weight of 30 rounds of this, and it is actually far more important at a distance now than this larger cartridge due to the ballistic coefficient, which is highly efficient. So, but sometimes I wonder, it's the little details that make the difference. It's not necessarily sometimes what's always on the top. It's the little details that make the difference. And sometimes I wonder with our military, even though they have all the vast superior firepower needed, will they be able to do the mission in a way that's going to preserve the prestige of the United States and not break the bank of the Treasury? See, they're going to win. But, the real question comes about how much cost, how long, and will the prestige of the United States be severely damaged? Because it's all a matter of how they play their cards. And I don't think we necessarily have the best people that are playing the cards right. I'm not too keen on Secretary of State Hillary Clinton either. I don't think she's the best for that job at all. I think that's a personal ego type person that has really is very intelligent, but really does not have a grasp on what's going on. It's more like a political career type person that's power hungry. So we could possibly have some serious unintended consequences from a political and military event that's coming up, and I think this thing is coming up pretty soon, because quite obviously the sanctions with Iran are not going to work. They're not going to work. What's going to happen is they're going to go to war. I'm not sure exactly when, but I don't think it's too far off. And these events, these war events, may cause gold and silver to really skyrocket a lot. That's where we might actually have the hyperinflation come into play. It's basically, we don't know. This is a throw of the dice. This is a throw of the dice when they're playing this game of war with Iran. But actually, they don't really have an option. They say the peace is an option, but I think something's going to happen one way or the other. Even if it happens by the force of the United States, it's going to happen one way or the other.